Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Friday, February 3rd. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last 24 hours, we've had some light precipitation scattered across much of the Great Basin with the exception of the far south into southern Nevada, Utah, and the Arizona Strip. Over the last 7 days, the image on the left shows most of the precipitation was targeted a little bit further north over Idaho and Wyoming, with still only light amounts over parts of Nevada and Utah. However, over the last 30 days, we've fared very well with precipitation, especially over the western side of the Great Basin into the Sierra and to western Nevada, but also healthy amounts of precipitation across Idaho, northern Utah, into Wyoming. Now looking at the satellite loop from this morning, we can see a good area of low pressure off the west coast, which is pushing plenty of moisture across the Great Basin today, mainly in the form of precipitation over the northern two-thirds of the area and cloud cover over southern areas. This system is relatively warm, so snow levels will be higher over the western side of the Great Basin. However, it will also bring gusty winds to the area. Now looking at the ventilation index for today, with these gusty winds in place, we'll see good dispersion over western and southern areas of the Great Basin, and still relatively poor dispersion in areas further north. Now if we look at the individual components, the transport winds on the left, we can see these gustier winds in the oranges and purples across parts of Nevada into Utah. However, further north, wind flow is much lighter. Also, mixing heights will remain relatively good over Nevada into the southern areas of the Great Basin, and still relatively poor as you move further north. If we move to Saturday, this system continues to push across the Great Basin with moisture in place over the northern half of the area with continued showers, and also ventilation indices will remain relatively high over the far western areas and into parts of the Arizona Strip and southern Utah, but will be lower over the rest of the Great Basin. If we look at the transport winds, we can see a significant decrease in winds across much of Nevada and Utah as we move into Saturday, with the exception of parts of the Sierra into far western Nevada, and then winds will be increasing across Idaho and Wyoming. Mixing heights also will remain relatively low over parts of the central areas of the Great Basin and a little bit higher as you move further north. If we move into Sunday, we still have some moisture in place, but showers will be decreasing, but still remain over parts of Idaho into northern Utah and Wyoming, with relatively poor dispersion in most areas, with the exception of parts of southern Utah, which will have slightly higher ventilation indices. On Sunday, the gusty winds are mainly confined to parts of the central Idaho mountains into western Wyoming, with much weaker winds further south. Also, mixing heights will remain relatively low, with the exception of parts of Idaho and Wyoming and southeast Utah. If we look at the forecast clearing index for Utah, we can see high clearing indices over the higher elevations of Utah today, with very low clearing indices in the valleys of western Utah and in the parts of the eastern side of the state. As we move through Saturday and Sunday, however, as the winds decrease, we will see those clearing indices continue to drop. If we look at the overall forecast amount of precipitation for the next 3 days, we'll see the highest amounts of precipitation in the Sierra and over parts of the higher elevations of Idaho and Wyoming, which will receive several inches of liquid precipitation. Down into the valleys over parts of western and northern Nevada and northern Utah will see lesser amounts, but at least still some precipitation. Further south, dry conditions will continue. As we move into early next week, we'll still see a stormy pattern across the Great Basin, with every day or so another area of low pressure bringing continued showers and cloud cover to the area. Again, these systems will be relatively warmer at least through this weekend and early next week, but we may even see some precipitation make it into southern areas of the Great Basin as we move into Monday. Winds will be somewhat gustier over the southern areas, so we'll see good dispersion over southern Nevada and the Arizona Strip, with poor ventilation indices over the rest of the area. As we move into Tuesday, this system continues to move east, so we will still be dealing with showers and cloud cover across the area, and still good dispersion over the southern and far western areas of the Great Basin and poor dispersion elsewhere. On Wednesday, we'll start to see a ridge of high pressure move in, so we will see decreasing chances for precipitation, likely still some cloud cover across the area, and lighter winds as the ridge of high pressure moves east. However, as the ridge moves in and the winds lighten, we'll likely see valley inversions start to develop as we go towards the middle of the week. Therefore, we will see poor dispersion and low ventilation indices in most areas. If we look at Thursday, that ridge moves further east with dry conditions again and lighter winds over the southern half of the Great Basin, but we will see more moisture moving in to parts of Idaho, Wyoming, and far northwest Nevada towards the mid to late portion of next week, bringing better chances of precipitation. Dispersion will remain very poor across the area on Thursday with that ridge moving eastward. If we look at the forecast amount of precipitation for the Monday morning through Wednesday morning time period, and you can see that early week systems that move through. We will see precipitation across most areas of the Great Basin, even in the far south, but the heavier amounts will be located over far western areas and in the northern half of the Great Basin. Now looking a little bit further ahead towards the middle of February, we will continue to see temperatures above normal in most areas, with the better chances of above normal precipitation confined to the northern half of the Great Basin, with much drier conditions further south. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.